All right, everybody. I'm going to start letting folks in. It is 6:56. Liz will let people queue up a little bit, and then at 7 o'clock or there near, we'll kind of start the meeting. Okay?
Okay, thank you.
But do you know what I'm talking about, Bill?
Well, I know the area you're talking about, but I don't know.
Yeah, there's cars and there's, the writing on the windshield like they were towed there.
Like towed there, somebody
Yeah.
using it as
And
a
some of the
storage lot?
cars, yeah, and some of the cars are obviously been in accidents and the front ends are all damaged. And so I was just wondering if you knew anything about that.
I don't, but I'll look into it. And
Yeah,
I think that is, or even if they're there, that's a code enforcement issue, not a police issue, because it's a private lot, as long as they're not blocking the alley. But I'll look into it.
yeah, it just doesn't add to the
No.
Ambiance of our neighborhood.
ambiance of White Center, to car lot filled with crashed cars and broken windows and yeah.
Right. I'll look into it. I don't know.
Okay, thank you.
You bet.
All right. Good evening, everyone. Liz, the people are still trickling in, so I'm going to keep admitting as they come.
Thank you. Oh. I lost you. Sorry. Is it 7 o'clock yet?
No,
Okay.
a couple more minutes.
Okay.
6:58. I'm just letting people kind of trickle in here. Welcome, everyone.
Awesome.
I know these people, Dawn, Natalie.
Natalie, I think, works with Mr. Constantine.
Bob and Gil.
Cool. Why am I not seeing them?
At a different setting than I
Well,
view.
Yeah, if you do view, you can see everybody on the.
Persons. I'll view. Or there's a thing called participants that I don't know how I got it, but
Oh, now I see. I'm sorry. I'm sorry I interrupted you.
Oh, no. I see a list of people under something called participants. Says we got 23 of those things.
Yeah, I'm glad people appear to be interested.
All right, Liz, it is now 7 o'clock. I will keep letting people into the meeting.
Joe Nguyen is here.
Great.
Early.
And Tracy.
Oh, people are still coming. I'll wait another minute. There's a little rush here coming.
Journalist is in.
Scott.
Are we ready?
Okay, Liz, it's just about everybody. I've cleared the waiting room.
Thank you very much and welcome all. Glad you can make it to the October meeting of NHUAC. It's going to be a very interesting one. We're really excited about it. Our first guest is going to be Deputy Bill, and he'll be telling you about what's been happening in North Highline over the past few months. It's been a busy time, and then we'll go to the forum.
I just want to, this is Barbara, I just want to cut in. So everybody is muted. If you, at this point, if you had a question for Bill after his presentation, You can raise your hand, use the reaction button on the bottom of the screen, and I will ask you to unmute yourself because everybody is muted right now. So that's the way at this point, we'll get questions answered, or you'll be able to ask them.
At the end of his presentation.
Yes.
Thanks,
Mhm.
Barbara.
Mhm.
How about if we hand it over to Deputy Bill? Thank you for coming.
All right, everybody. I'm here. We will biggest thing I think that people want to hear about is the fires that have been happening in White Center of late. So I'm going to break them down. We'll start with the oldest one of recent memory was the Yarrington Funeral Fire, Yarrington Funeral Home Fire. Absolutely an arson. Person was caught, was convicted, and has already done his time in prison. Then we have 2 arsons that occurred at the vacant building to the north of Gerber Towing. Not the collision center, Gerber Collision Center. First one was about a year and a half ago. Second one was very recently. Both of those are technically arsons, but they were started, they were homeless warming fires that got away from people. So they didn't go into the building to burn the building down. So they are still being investigated. So those weren't somebody coming in to burn the place down. The locker room had 2 fires in the last year or so. Both of those, there is video from Lucky's marijuana store. It shows that it is 100% an accidental organic fire. Nobody lit the fire. And then we have, I'm going to call it the Lumberyard Fire, although it affected 7 businesses, just for the, I got to call it something. The Lumberyard Fire, 100% an arson, and is very actively being investigated. I won't tell a lot of stuff about it because it's such an active investigation, but it is being investigated as a hate crime. And the fire investigator says he's going to investigate it as a hate crime until he knows it's not a hate crime. And then Monday of last week, just across the border into Seattle, there was another fire of a vacant building, and there's a bunch of video on it, 100% an arson. So we had the meeting I had a community meeting on Tuesday of last week, and that was the main topic. People are afraid. And the arson investigator who was there, his name is Investigator Scott Case, who is the lead investigator for the Lumberyard Fire, tried to reassure everybody that there is not a mad arsonist running around. It might seem like a lot of weird stuff happening at once, but it's not a mad arsonist running around White Center. I hope that alleviates a lot of fears.
Thank you.
Before I move on, should we take questions on the fire?
Yes, there was one, I think. Dawn? Dawn Gray, did she have a hand up?
I don't see, hold on. I can ask her to unmute. I don't see her hand up.
Why don't you ask her to unmute? I think
Dawn, you don't have your.
Okay.
Dawn's
Sorry.
on. Okay.
yeah, thank you.
I wasn't able to unmute.
Okay.
Actually, my question is not about the fires, and I will hold on to it, possibly email. So,
All right.
sorry
Okay,
for the raised hand, but no question right now.
okay, thank you.
All right. My stat sheet that we have, can you put that up, Barbara? All right, so we're looking at this is our crime stats for the last 2 years, and the red is this year. As we can see, and this is produced by the Sheriff's Office crime analysis people. So it's a very accurate graph. This is not something that I did trying to figure out on the computer. So the red is this year. We are below the last 2 years in both Part 1 crimes, which are crimes of violence. And we are below on Part 2 crimes, which are property crimes. To be transparent, I believe that the property crimes are down because a lot of people are no longer reporting their property crimes. So there's the graph. I will go over a couple of high profile things that have happened over the last, over the summer. We had a homicide that occurred about 112th and 3rd Avenue South. That was 2 cars. One car shot another car, killed the guy in the car. And that is actively being investigated. And that was on the 6/3, so June 3rd. On July 31st, there was a shooting on 16th Avenue, just right almost in front of Drunky Two Shoes. And that was 2 guys arguing about a parking spot, and one guy shot the other guy. On the 2nd of September, there was a stabbing over about 100th and 13th Avenue Southwest. And that is where a girlfriend stabbed her boyfriend in the face. She was arrested, and the last I heard, she was still in the King County Jail. On 9/11, we had an armed robbery at the CMAR building where some guys robbed 3 of the maintenance workers who were working on the shrubs and outside landscaping. On 9/17, we had another armed robbery of another weed shop where they came in, jumped the counter, and robbed the weed shop. Those are the only big ones. That's not true. We had the shooting at Roxbury Lanes. Well, it wasn't at it started at Roxbury Lanes. The shooting was in the middle of the street at 28th and Roxbury. And it was a fight that it started in the inside Roxbury Lanes. It spilled out into the street, and everybody thought it was broken up. One of the fighting guys was walking away, and somebody drove up and shot him and killed him also. And that is actively being investigated. And I believe that's all I think that's it in a nutshell.
Do we have any questions? Becky? Becky Wong? Barbara?
Yeah, can you hear me?
There you go, Beck.
Yeah, just wanted to bring up, we've been seeing a lot of gang tagging, definitely not standard graffiti, all around the neighborhood, up and down 16th Street. I mean, right on Roxbury and 16th, there's a whole side of the, I think it's the Walgreens there with a bunch of gang tagging all over it. What's going on with any of that? Just
Bill, do you want to answer
You
that?
on mute?
Sorry, I muted myself.
Yeah, okay.
I know that there has been ongoing troubles for the last couple of years between Central District gangs and South End gangs. And none of them live in White Center, but guess what's in the middle is White Center. Also, there is an influx of Hispanic gangs in Burien. And I think we're seeing a lot of graffiti from that as well. But I don't have any, I mean, that's all I could tell you about it. I don't know.
Okay, thank you. Is there any more, Becky? Or you?
Don, did you had your hand up again? Okay, so unmute. Okay, go ahead.
Unmuted. So I have a question about a situation on our street. I'm not sure. I feel like so there's been some sort of police activity out to this neighbor's home. The gentleman lives outside his parents' home in his car. There's a second car that's been tagged with spray paint, I think last week or the week before. Basically, he's been living in his car for since the start of COVID. And just wondering, I actually wake up pretty early and walk my dogs, and I've seen like 5 a.m, and I've seen activity around both of these cars. I'm just wondering if there is anything that can be done. A couple of people have suspected or felt like there may be some drug activity going on. I know at one point he told a neighbor that he was burning computer components to extract the gold to make money. So I know this isn't a serious crime.
Are you about 106 and 24th?
21st.
Yeah. I know exactly what you're talking about. And I don't think it's a drug issue. The guy who's living in the car is very mentally ill. And his parents live in the house, and they don't want him in the house because of his mental illness. The fire department's been out there. I've been out there. The cops have been out there, and I believe the last time I was out there, he was burning stuff in his little burn barrel, and the fire department was there with us. And I believe they were going to issue a ticket or whatever, however they do it, but I don't know that they did. And I mean, the guy is pretty significantly off his rocker. How do we fix that? Well, we can't make him take his medicine. But I'm going to write it down. I mean, if we tow the car, what do we do with the guy? That's the question.
He has a second car.
He'll move into the second car. I'll tell you what though, I will write it down, and maybe I can have the crisis response team at least ask. And I don't know that they haven't already been out, but I will write it down and I will pass it on to them.
I appreciate that, and our neighbors would appreciate it. I just wanted to bring it to someone's attention. It sounds like you already are very with the
That's
situation.
106 and 21st.
Yes.
All right. Anybody else?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, Liz,
Any
Liz,
more questions?
I don't see any more hands up. And we both, and Dow and Joe, oh, wait. Okay, we have one more question here.
Oh, good.
Loretta, you have, okay, Loretta, go ahead.
Bill, this is Loretta again. We're still having an issue on First Avenue Southwest between 112th and 110th with cars that are wrecked, broken, missing the back, fronts in, and a couple of homeless vehicles along there. Is there any way to maybe help those guys move along or move those cars out of there? They're also parking very close and right on the corner of 112th and 110th, excuse me, Southwest and First Southwest. So when you go to turn that corner, it's very difficult to see around.
I'll keep pressure on it. And I noticed this one on 112th, it's just sitting on its hubs.
Yeah,
And it's my belief, I cannot prove it, that the local mechanic shops,
yeah,
these cars at auction for nothing, taking the pieces they want off and then dumping them in the street, in a neighborhood. There's also a problem with overflow parking from the surrounding apartment complexes.
yes.
And complexes charge for you to park there. So people out of there in order to not have to pay to park in the complex.
Yeah, well, some of them have berry bushes growing over them.
Yeah. I'll get on it again and I'm gonna write that down.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Bill, this is Barbara. I have just a quick question. The shooting, that the Seattle police came to serve the warrant on 21st Avenue. Is that last month? So that house, people are coming and going out of that house still. Do you know anything about what's going on there?
We've discussed that house before. The police were served a warrant on the house for a very, he was a homicide suspect.
Right.
For a couple of different homicides. And the house is on the radar. The people in there are pretty gangsters. Getting them kicked out is almost impossible.
Okay. Because
Well,
they're just
it is
dumping,
impossible.
yeah, they're just dumping more and more trash from the house over on the park side, but okay.
With the garbage, even if I caught them, I can't. There's no little I can do.
Well, their mailbox is over there with the address on it. So, anyway, yeah, okay. Well, I just was wondering if there was.
Did you call the Department roads? Somebody said that they were going to call.
Yeah,
Has anybody done that?
I don't know.
I'll do it.
Okay. The parks people had been there. I thought maybe they would have taken care of some of it, but they didn't. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Bill, very much.
All right.
And anything else?
All right. I'm good.
That was a good report. Thank you.
All right. I'll hang out.
Good. Please do. And do we
I wonder if I
have,
could ask for the host.
Yes. We
yes,
have both Joe and Joe on, they're on.
down, Joe?
Oh,
Yeah.
Barbara, there's a question from a phone number. Go ahead, sir.
I've been blocked from the meeting because Zoom locked up on my computer and I had to restart it, and now I can't join the meeting via Zoom on my computer. And I wonder if I could get that undone. Mark Johnston.
Yeah, Jerry, can you take care of that?
Hey, Mark, I got your number. I'm going to give you a call real quick, okay? We might be able to figure out a solution.
Okay.
Thank you both. And it sounds like we're ready for our town hall meeting. Do we have Executive Constantine and Senator Nguyen?
I'm right here.
Welcome.
Thanks for having us.
Hey, Liz.
Well, we're glad to see you. Thank you very much. I'm going to get right into it, okay?
Mhm.
And I wrote a little bit, so I hope you don't get bored. Okay. We want to get started by clarifying a few details. NHUAC does not endorse candidates. NHUAC's focus is North Highline, the 2.7 square mile unincorporated area between Seattle and Burien, including especially White Center. NHUAC's mantra is be informed, be involved, and be heard. We're going to try to do that tonight. And some of our questions will be based on data. In the data-driven spirit, I did some research and believe you both live in the zip code 98116 of West Seattle. Is that correct?
That's a fact.
That's a fact. But I was
Awesome.
born in White Center, so I lived in Park Lake Homes growing up.
Yes, you'll get to talk about that later if you want to. And when possible, please limit your answers to 2 minutes, but if you need more, this is White Center. Remember that, okay? We're open to learning. And we're gonna start with the 5-minute introduction. Executive Constantine, would you like to go first?
Sure.
And I've got some specifics here if you don't mind.
Go ahead.
First of all, how would you like me to refer to you?
I mean, you can call me Dow. It's fine.
Thank you, sir. I shall do that. That's
Mhm.
easier. And Senator? Same
It's also been
question?
Joe. Joe's fine.
Okay,
Yeah.
thanks. Okay, where were you born? Your education and work experience, where you live, your qualifications, and your goals. And if you can do it in 5 minutes or so, that would be awesome. Dow, would you go first?
Okay, so where I was born, Swedish Hospital. Where do we live now? Pretty much the exact same place I've lived my whole life, give or take 100 feet. My education work experience, I graduated from Schmitz Park Elementary, Madison Junior High, and West Seattle High School, and then the University of Washington undergrad. I went to graduate school in urban planning. I have a planning degree from the University of Washington and a law degree from the University of Washington. What were your other two questions, Liz?
Your qualifications and goals.
Well, in addition to all that, I've served as an attorney in private practice. I've served in the State House and the State Senate representing this district on the County Council, and now as County Executive. And I think I've proved my ability to get very difficult things done. My goals are to continue to get difficult things done, and particularly in this moment coming out of the set of crises, the COVID crisis, where we've achieved one of the best, most successful responses in the nation, but also the economic crisis that accompanied it, the climate crisis, the crisis in our democracy, and the awakening, really, of our nation to the reality of entrenched racism. We are moving forward with the reforms and agenda that we've been pushing for years, and people are suddenly very much more open to rapid progress on these issues, and I'm really excited about it. I'm pleased that we have been recognized as a leader in fiscal responsibility as well, making government work with AAA bond ratings and the ability to bring the powers and authorities of government to bear to help people in all of our communities. I look forward to a robust discussion tonight.
Thank you. Joe?
Perfect. Thank you so much for having me. And like I said, born in White Center, my family raised us in the Park Lake Homes, the one that's now called Ceola Gardens, because my family were refugees from Vietnam, and that's where we landed as well. And then spent the better part of my life as well in Burien, and I now live in West Seattle. So born in Virginia Mason, went to school at Hazel Valley Elementary, Cascade Middle School, and then Kennedy High School before going to Seattle University, where I have degrees in economics, finance, and humanities. After that, I worked in the business community. So I actually worked in finance for the first few years before going into startups. And now I work at Microsoft doing analytics and strategy. And I currently serve as the state senator in this great area. And I happen to be the first person of color to ever represent the 34th legislative district. And candidly, one of the reasons why I wanted to serve in the first place was because this community truly raised me. And one of the most vivid memories that I had growing up was after my father was in a car accident that left him quadriplegic. My brother and I would have to carry him up and down the front steps of our house to take him to doctor's appointments. And one of our neighbors came by and said, "Hey, why don't you have a ramp to then roll him up and down?" And the honest answer was we couldn't afford one. So him and his buddies came by about a week later and built a ramp for us. So when we talk about the community, in this area, that's who we're talking about. Those are the values that we have. And ever since then, I felt called to serve this community in whatever capacity possible. And I never thought that I'd be running for office, if I'm honest. But I got involved on issues around affordability, on homelessness, on law enforcement relations, and just realized that I wanted to be a part of the change. And I was tired of trying to advocate for people to make that change on behalf of communities that have been ignored for so long. So that's why I ran for state senate, and that's how I serve in the legislature right now. I happen to be in the most diverse legislature in the history of Washington state. We've done some tremendous things to work with our communities, whether it was anti-poverty efforts, whether it's investing in basic needs, investing in education to truly move the state forward. But really, a lot of the issues that I think we face happen at the local level. And I believe that we are at a unique moment in time where we have to act with urgency to get these things done. And that's kind of my goal, because I believe that talent is universal, but opportunity is not. And I want a chance for everyone in our community to be able to thrive. And I've seen that because my family had that opportunity, even in our worst of times. And I believe that we can do that for folks in King County as well, especially in White Center, because it's very near and dear to my heart. I have family members that went to Evergreen High School. I still have family members in the area as well. So when we talk about the North Highland area, you're talking about where I was born and raised, and you're talking about the community that I care about very much as well. So thank you for the time, and happy to answer more questions as well.
Okay, thank you very much. And it's interesting because a lot of the questions that I ask you, at least, will be centered on opportunity. The first deals with housing. King County just released its draft of the North Highline sub-area plan. The plan appears geared to complete North Highline's transformation to a high-density neighborhood, much like a Seattle urban village. This is concerning, particularly considering the recently released racial equity analysis of Seattle's urban village strategy. According to a Seattle Times article, the analysis found that the urban village strategy does not reduce displacement of Black, Indigenous people of color. Instead, it continues policies designed to limit their housing choices. In other words, it fosters segregation, discrimination, and displacement. Housing and equity are very connected. According to the Washington State Housing Finance Commission, in 2018, North Highline had 13 low-income housing properties with nearly 1,300 units and over 1,700 bedrooms. However, your West Seattle zip code had only 104 one-bedroom senior units. Housing disparities are pervasive. Here comes the question. Do you agree that King County should use the findings of Seattle's racial equity analysis to inform its research and make data fact-based decisions on the future of housing in North Highline? If not, what should be done?
What are
Joe,
you
you can
asking?
go first.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you so much for the detailed question,
I'm
Liz. And I
sorry.
did see that come out, but I haven't had a chance to do an in-depth review, but I do understand the gist of your question as well. Look, I believe that we need more affordable housing, period. If you look at the number of folks who are moving to this area, but also the rapid growth and some of the costs associated with housing, part of it is that we have a limited supply. So whether it is in North Highline or is in West Seattle or even down in Burien, I think we do need to have more housing in general. But the research I think you're quoting too is you have to have the resources associated with it to make them successful. So if you have housing in place, but say for instance, they're low-income housing that doesn't necessarily have property taxes associated with them, you won't necessarily have the appropriate resources in place to mitigate some of the impacts associated with that growth. So it's everything from investing in the transit infrastructure that's associated with this housing, even the sewer lines, the streets and the sidewalks. Those things also have to be considered when we talk about where density should be. And also making sure that there is a mind for how do you mitigate anti-displacement, meaning the communities who are currently there, how do you ensure that they don't get gentrified out because of some of this growth? So in general, I do believe that we need more housing. I do also think that we've done a bad job in terms of making enough investments to mitigate some of the impacts of that growth.
But you don't have a problem with the disparity?
No,
where
I
it's
do. I mean,
placed?
so the answer is I do. I think if you look at that report, I think part of it is, in fact, the resources associated with it. So if you had anti-displacement efforts, if you had resources like community centers, like education, like even public safety, that's how you mitigate some of that harm associated with that growth.
Okay, Sal?
Well, Liz, this obviously harks back to a conversation we've been having for many, many years. You can't be simultaneously against displacement and against affordable housing. I think that we need economically diverse communities. I think that Greenbridge, Osceola Gardens were successful examples of taking a low-income community monoculture, creating new communities that had room for the low-income residents and also room for people at other incomes. But we cannot rest on our laurels. The development will keep coming without interventions. The property values will keep rising without interventions. The displacement will continue without interventions. The sub-area plan is a plan co-created, and this is just the public review draft, co-created with the community. In fact, we have a contract with the CDA to help with the outreach and the gathering of public input. And clearly, any information coming from Seattle study should be an important part of that conversation. But I would suggest to you that one of the challenges with the Seattle example is simply that there is not enough, which is to say that economic conditions have overwhelmed what the city attempted to do during the Rice administration to create more space and transit-oriented development in so-called urban villages, that the demand is so much greater than the supply that property values are running up and displacement is happening. We need not allow that to happen in White Center, but in order for it not to happen, we're going to have to act aggressively. We're going to have to act based on, yes, data and lessons learned, but we're not going to be able to simply close our eyes and hope everything stays as it is, because that's not how real property works. Things are going to change and people and communities will get pushed out unless we're very intentional.
Thank you. We're going to go back in history a little bit, okay? In 2011, the White Center CDA commissioned an opportunity analysis of White Center. It found that White Center is a low opportunity neighborhood. In 2015, King County named White Center North Highline as one of 3 communities of opportunity, tasked with addressing White Center's economic and racial inequities with a place-based focus. I believe that programs are not enough, that we need to focus on equity and fact-based policies. So I've got a little data here for you. Barbara, we're going to need the exhibit, please. Public Health 2019 King County. Barbara?
I'm getting it, Liz. Hold on a second.
Thank you.
Come on, Rick, let's go.
You'll come.
There you go. Can you see it?
Yes.
Yes.
No, that's the wrong one.
Oh, sorry. Hold on. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
Hold on.
Well, I can explain.
I got it right now, Liz. Hold on. There you go. See it?
Yeah, the top of
Okay.
it. It's good. Thank you.
Mhm.
Public Health's 2019 County Health Profile compares data from 48 King County areas. The profile tells the story of North Highline. This exhibit summarizes a few pieces of that data, comparing White Center to West Seattle. 26% of North Highline residents, more than any other area, suffer from fair or poor health. And 30% have unmet medical needs compared with 11% of West Seattle residents. If you go down low, there we go. North Highline has one of the highest poverty rates in King County. West Seattle has one of the lowest. 27.5% of North Highline relies on food stamps. That's the highest in King County. Child mortality is higher in North Highline than most of King County, and North Highline's life expectancy is one of the lowest. Then we go to education. We got another.
Liz?
Barbara?
It's up. Yeah.
Thank you. Education is another area of inequity. Our schools are struggling. The 2011 Opportunity Analysis reported researchers commonly refer to a tipping point, the point at which the challenges associated with poverty in the school spirals beyond the control of the school. Most experts place that point at 50%. At this point, all students' prospects are depressed. The exhibit shows that North Highline schools have passed the lower, Barbara, please. Barbara.
Hold on, Liz. It's not, hold on. For some reason, it's not moving down.
Oh, I'll keep talking. Whether you can see it or not, the exhibit shows that North Highline schools have passed the tipping point. And North Highline's poor rankings evidence the price being paid by our young people. Out of 1,136 elementary schools in Washington State, White Center Heights, Mount View, and Beverly Park come in at numbers 1,027, 1,097, and 1,102. Evergreen High School is 318 out of 418 high schools. West Seattle is 113. As executive, what can you do to assure that North Highline students have the opportunity to achieve their educational potential? Dal?
So this is not dissimilar to the last question, because you have to focus not on displacing those of limited income with people who have more means, but of lifting up the people in the community and making sure that they have a better opportunity to thrive. That's why we have worked with the residents of North Highline to create the community needs list that was just released. That's why we launched the participatory budgeting initiative in White Center. And they're pushing out both the $10 million designated for that and the marijuana sales tax revenue. That is why we are focusing on helping the White Center hub, transferring $2.5 million of property with another $1 million in capital and $5 million more that I've proposed. That is why we are making all of these investments in White Center. And that is also why White Center, North Highline, as well as Skyway need to be part of cities. And I have been saying this for a long time, but we have a tax base that is made for rural counties. And in order to really be able to make the kinds of investments that need to be made here, we need to have North Highline become part of Burien or part of Seattle, where they have a tax base, where they have a tax system under state law that is able to provide for urban level services. Now, I'm proud that through Best Starts for Kids, for example, we've been able to invest heavily in the Highline schools with health clinics, with before and after school, out of school time programs for young people to keep them engaged in school, and much more. Further, we've been able to keep some 10,200 youth and their families from becoming homeless with Best Starts funding. And it is, I think, a credit to the people of this county that countywide folks renewed that measure by some 63%, even though the spending is very much focused on South County and South Seattle communities. It is my determination that we are going to continue to make the kind of investments that I just mentioned to help the people who currently live in North Highline become more economically successful, because these social determinants of health that you're talking about are tied to race and tied to income, which in itself is tied to race. We have to break loose of those historic racist realities in our systems, economic, educational, and health. And the investments that we're making, including through the White Center Hub, are directed at that.
Thank you. Joe?
Perfect. Thank you so much, Liz. And candidly, I don't think I needed your report to understand the disparities associated with our communities here, because having gone to White Center Heights and also the Cascade Elementary School and having friends at Evergreen High School as well, I saw it firsthand, the disparities that we're seeing right now. And a lot of it is around economic opportunity, like you had said before. I think income inequality is one of the drivers of this, and those determinants then cause these other harms. Right now, King County doesn't have an Office of Economic Development. There's only one person that's kind of trying to help shepherd some of these things, but there's no dedicated office in this particular space. I think that's one key opportunity that we can have to invest in our communities here. Everything from helping our small businesses be able to have longer term leases or navigate a bureaucracy. I think making sure that we have an opportunity to generate wealth in our communities and having the people there be able to partake in that economic prosperity would help alleviate some of these concerns as well. But there are resources, like mentioned before, in terms of Best Starts for Kids, in terms of how can we put more resources and funding towards the nonprofits doing great service in this space. I serve right now on outside of the legislature on a participatory budget program that is investing heavily in the White Center community. And what I will say is that opportunity is lacking, but talent is not. There's a tremendous amount of talent of individuals who are there. And I don't say that just because I was there. I say that because I've seen and worked with the kids who are there right now as well. So for me, this is not about a lack of talent within the communities. It's about a lack of opportunity. And if we are just now talking about this in 2021, the report was commissioned in 2015. These are things that I experienced back in 1980. So we need to have people who are impacted by policies at the table creating this change. And the fact that we're now seeing more diverse legislators from these communities at the table, I think will accelerate some of these investments.
Thank you, Joe. North Highline also suffers from the most frequent mental distress in King County. On June 11th, in the middle of the afternoon, 3 people were shot in the White Center Business District. 2 died. On July 5th, an arson gutted the Lumberyard Bar and 7 adjacent businesses. In September, 2 downtown buildings were gutted and several businesses were damaged in 2 separate fires. Gunshots are common. The sheriff's office is underfunded. Deputies are spread thin. As executive, how can you help reduce crime, violence, and trauma in North Highline? Joe, I think you go first this time.
Yeah, look, and this is actually related to some of the other questions as well, because systemically, when you see areas that are economically distressed, you have these unintended or negative outcomes that we're talking about right now. And one of the things that I will point out is that there was a report done pretty recently that kind of reviewed, I think, over 1 million calls that SPD made. So you can kind of extract a little bit for King County as well. But about 80% of the calls were non-criminal activity, kind of the same things that Sheriff was mentioning earlier. We're checking in on certain things or property as well. So instead of necessarily having a law enforcement official going to every single one of these calls, we can utilize their services best for the criminal activity and truly serve public safety, and have community safety officers whose job is to walk around and ensure that we're responding to these low-level offenses that aren't necessarily criminal, but still requires attention as well. I think that's a better way to utilize our resources, by having folks who have backgrounds in behavioral mental health or social services going out and reaching out to these individuals, so we can break that cycle, so we don't see the same person over and over again causing some problems. So that's one of the ways that I would probably go about tackling this as well.
Thank you. Dal?
Well, this and many of the other questions we're dealing with tonight are why I created a Department of Local Services and put John Taylor in charge of it, so they can have someone who's directly responsible and accountable to the unincorporated area, and particularly to unincorporated urban areas that have some significant challenges. I was out the morning after the Terrordice shootings with Detective Bill and others to discuss what happened and what we can do to reduce the violence, to prevent the violence in the future. And yes, putting more officers, including community service officers, on the street is one of the solutions we discussed, but also really elevating our gun violence prevention program, which is a public health-based approach to gun violence reduction. More of the community interveners who can be on the streets, understanding who folks are, really being able to see where the potential for violence is happening, to get in and intervene to stop people from being victimized, to stop people from victimizing, to get the younger siblings away from that environment and out of harm's way. It has got to be a multi-pronged approach. I've simultaneously, since we've talked about behavioral health, constituted now 2 behavioral health street teams, 24/7 street teams, and proposed to the council funding for 2 more. And while many of those will be deployed in downtown Seattle, I am making room for at least one of them to be able to circulate to communities that are having challenges with people suffering from mental health disorders or behavioral health disorders on the streets, including White Center and Burien. I've had a meeting with Mayor of Burien and Burien business owners about very similar issues to those you're discussing today. I think that we have many more avenues now to be able to really begin to rein in the violence, rein in the challenge of those who are struggling on the streets with behavioral health disorders. And I also I can't leave this topic, Liz, without discussing the fires. I was also out the morning after the Lumberyard Fire with Councilmember McDermott and with John Taylor. And John has been on the job since then, as these different fires with, as Bill said, different causes have happened. And we are obviously ready with our existing programs to help. We have so far pushed out $108,000 to 12 fire affected businesses on top of the 1.3 million we've given in business grants in White Center over the last year. But also, we are working behind the scenes right now to identify, in conjunction with the sub-area plan and the community needs list, additional resources that can be brought to bear in this particular moment of crisis for the White Center Business District.
Thank you. I've got one more question that I hadn't been thinking about asking, but I feel a need, so I'm going to do it, okay? Joe, I'm concerned because I think that something that has been going on for a long time, and what I was trying to show when I talked about the amount of low-income housing in White Center versus in your zip code, was that people in need, people with, are being segregated economically. And I would like to hear both of you say, Liz, I don't think that's right, and I will work to allow poor people to live in more affluent neighborhoods where they've actually got more of a future. Am I going to get that from you?
People have been segregated economically. Redlining is a history in Seattle that is atrocious, right? So you're not wrong. I mean, that literally did happen. I think that still manifests itself right now as well. And that's why you see certain pockets do well and certain pockets not do well. And candidly, one of the ways that you combat that is by having more density across the jurisdictions, not just in White Center, but across the jurisdictions as well. And the other things that you can do for anti-displacement, there are innovative strategies that we can try to employ to be able to help communities combat some of these issues, whether it's using land trust, having affordable housing for different tranches, using mixed income types of environments, but not necessarily just in White Center. But I do think in that area, we do need to have more investments, say for instance, in more connected transit, having more resources to ensure that our young people have opportunities for growth, making sure that our education is funded. So I don't think the incumbent would disagree as well. I think there has been a history of redlining in this area that causes this type of inequities to happen.
Thank you. Dow?
I mean, that's all correct. Economic diversity, as I said before, is actually quite important. It's important to everyone. And it is important for those of limited incomes to be able to have more opportunity to be in an economically diverse community rather than one that's segregated by means. But that means it is a two-way street. That means protecting people from displacement in lower income communities, even as the outside market pressures continue to cause changes. We have, this is what I said about being intentional. We have to be intentional about helping people keep their roots in White Center, to be able to raise their kids in the same community that they have lived in, even as all these economic changes in our region continue to happen. And in more affluent neighborhoods, cities need to be making more room for more housing styles, for more affordable housing, housing that is naturally affordable and housing that is subsidized. And that is a raging debate across our region right now, as some cities are embracing that and some cities are really putting on the brakes about allowing any housing other than the most expensive, what the market will produce right now. So King County's put many hundreds of millions of dollars into housing for those in the 0 to 30% median income range. But even that, hundreds of millions, I think getting close to $1 billion over the course of the last few years, even that is not going to really do the trick here, because this affluence, the way we've seen our region transform, those are powerful forces. And we have to be very focused, very intent on protecting people against them and harnessing them to deliver the kind of community we want.
Thank you both very much. I'm going to open up the questions. Barbara, do you have a question?
Yes, I do. So one of my concerns, I live in White Center, not far from the business district, and I know with the new sub-area plan, and I can only hope that the planning will be better than the haphazard development that has gone on around where I live, where, you know, lots are basically clear cut, not one tree. There's been a development in my neighborhood where a huge lot that was covered with many old growth trees. Every last tree was cut down. There's not one tree left. And there will be, I believe, 16 homes when it's all said and done. Right now there's 6, 7, 8, 9. And it's tar driveway, and they've done this all through this neighborhood. And I know that, you know, the issue of trees and planting trees in parks, but what about the neighborhoods? I get calls every week by developers. I live on a large lot. And developers have called me that, you know, they could put 4 homes on my lot. I have a lot filled with trees. Every tree will be gone if that were the case. How do we protect what we have? Because that all goes to quality of life issues. And I'll start with Dow.
Yeah. So first off, the sub-area plan is an opportunity. The plan and anti-displacement measures, apropos of our previous conversation, and development standards can be adopted simultaneously. And that's critical because some cities like Seattle have a much more sort of refined set of protections for neighborhoods. One of the opportunities that we have, and I'm really sorry to hear about the tree lots in your neighborhood, because that's actually the very issue that got me involved in politics in the first place. One of the opportunities we have is through my land conservation initiative. We had a very strong equity component of that, and we concluded that in every community we must protect or create green space, open space, so that people have a respite from the heat from the concrete. And that shouldn't only be for those who live in affluent places. And so we're now investing very heavily in either saving or creating open space. One of the places that we have just opened a new open space tract is over near Boulevard Park. And it is a wonderful restoration effort, but it is not in downtown White Center. And we need to have more green space and more protections. This plan, the one that the community is working on right now, is an opportunity to help make that happen.
Thank you. Jill?
Yeah, and I think, you know, the rapid growth that we're kind of talking about right now, that's why it's important to have good planning that's rooted, no pun intended, in the community and the conversations that are being had there as well. I think urban forestry is actually a key component, not just in making sure that we have beautiful spaces, but also towards tackling climate change. And what's interesting is we talked about gun violence earlier, and there are studies that show having access to green spaces and parks to find respite from potentially trauma also is impacted by having green spaces. So we need that as a part of our communities. One of the pieces of legislation that I did work on was around urban canopy and being able to document and protect these spaces as well. So I don't know what the answer might necessarily be for you, Barbara, but I do think this is an important part of that development, being mindful of how we protect our green spaces. And I think that should be a focus going forward in this new plan.
Okay, thank you.
If I may add, the hub is planning to go into the space that's where the food bank is.
Yeah.
There's a place right now.
Yeah, by the roundabout.
Yeah. And that is one of the last few areas that is really offers an opportunity to be used as a green space. But the way the planning is, as I understand it, it will become a lot of buildings. Is there some way to maybe put the hubs somewhere else in town?
I mean, so the state's allocated money to help build that out, and I've seen some of the renderings. It does look honestly beautiful and incorporates the landscape that's around there as well. I would imagine at this stage of the game, I don't know if you'd be able to find another space for it, but also it's not a bad spot in my mind, as long as it's done correctly.
Okay, down and same.
That's right.
What do you agree?
Yeah.
Okay.
But I do think, I mean, Liz, just to revisit the point, and you know, I agree with you that, you know, every time we build a house lot or a building lot line to lot line, we lose an opportunity to have a sort of coherent, cohesive set of policy goals met, because we lose the trees, we lose a lot of what helps give character to a community. But we just have to really plan for that in communities. Tukwila has a terrible challenge. Many communities have a terrible challenge with a lack of green space, and you know, that it is absolutely essential that everyone have access within walking distance of parks, trees, trails, and the things that give us respite living in an urban setting.
Well, okay. I look forward to seeing what happens in our neighborhood. Thanks. Any other question? Pat, do you have a question? Okay, do we have any questions from the community?
So like I said, that Pat is up, but also people, if you just go to the icon to raise your hand for
Barbara?
the chat. Yes, Jerry?
Yeah, we do have one question, Sabine.
Right, I know, but Pat is all, I think Pat also had a question first, and then we'll go to Sabina. But I just want to let people know to just raise your hand and we'll ask you to unmute, and then unmute yourself with a question. So Pat, if you had a question.
Well, I had originally planned to talk about parks, but you've covered that quite well. And Dow did mention the new forest called a park in the Boulevard Park area, and it's sizable, and a lot of money was spent to obtain the property, but it's really like put on the edge of South Park, which is great. So you could say you're lending this park to Seattle, perhaps, because it's not much good for the Boulevard Park area. But in the last, over 10 years ago, the study that was conducted by the University of Washington's folks, one of the main topics suggested that White Center could improve access to existing parks, improve connectivity between parks, seek vacant lots within the area to create parks. But I know that's been talked about. County representatives presented to NHUAC's meetings last year about how they were looking for parcels, but we haven't heard any updates or anything more about what's been accomplished or what you can accomplish. And I know it's put off by COVID. The other question I have is, what about all that land off of Myers Way, where it's part city and then becomes King County? And we had a lot of presentation and got a lot done by all parties to clear out some of the homelessness tent people and so forth. But there's a lot of land there. And is there any plans to accomplish something there? So that would be more for Dow to answer.
Sure. Well, first off, I will say that open space preservation, park acquisition is kind of my jam. That's something that I've been focused on since many, many years before I entered politics, and has been a consistent theme throughout my time in office. I know that the Department of Natural Resources and Parks is very focused on our service to North Highline. I was at a Park and White Center this last week to announce our new conservation corps sort of scaling, where we're going to be hiring some 400 people to help clean and maintain our parks and streets, restore our communities. And I'm really proud of that work and the work that the smaller crew that I stood up a couple of years ago has been doing in White Center. You know, they picked up 40 tons of garbage already this year, that crew in White Center. But I do not have a direct report on any property negotiations right now. John Taylor, our director, is, I believe, listening in, our director of local services, and he will connect with the Department of Natural Resources and Parks to let me know if there are any property transitions pending. But usually we don't announce those for fear of messing up the deals until they're done. I will redirect you again, though, to the sub-area plan. White Center needs more green space, just as it needs other investments. And we are ready to make those investments, but we don't want to make them on our own. We are going to do all of this work in lockstep with the community. That's why we have the CDA on contract reaching out to folks. That's why we are going to be in conversations with the residents directly. I think that we have a chance right now to do some pretty remarkable things, and in Skyway. And it is a different approach than has happened in the past, because we're really, in everything we do now, focused on working with community, getting wisdom from community, and moving forward with community co-created improvements.
Thank you. And let me just say that local services and parks are two of my favorite departments. They're awesome. Thank you very much. So now I think we're ready for maybe Carmel. The questioners or Sabina, who came first?
Sabina, I will ask her to unmute. Oh, where did Sabina go? I don't see her on here now.
Okay, hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi.
Yeah.
All right. Hi, I'm Sabina, a White Center resident, and I have some concerns and criticisms that I'd like to address and get response on regarding the sub-area plan and the land use and zoning map amendments. You know, currently the infrastructure in parts of White Center are, frankly, they're inadequate. There is a lack of sidewalks, street connectivity, adequate lighting. And I have concerns about the density proposals in the land use plan and how there doesn't seem to be anything that would really, I think, adequately address some of these issues. You know, looking at the plan on the west side of White Center, off from Roxbury on 28th and 30th, you know, the streets there, the urban infrastructure, the street infrastructure is completely subpar. There are no cross streets from Roxbury to 104th, and those blocks are also 2 blocks wide. There isn't, you know, it is a solid block from 28 to 26 with no thoroughfares. That is 16 contiguous blocks. And if the density in our zoning there is going to double, I think it doesn't take a master's degree in urban planning to know that that is just poor urban planning. That does not a community make to have that level of housing without the adequate infrastructure to support it. You know, sidewalks, cross streets, traffic calming measures. And I frankly don't see anything in the suburban area plan that is going to address how those solid blocks would somehow get the infrastructure that frankly isn't there already to support the density that is in our community. And those sorts of planning that needs to be looked at and really has to be there before there is the switch in our the zoning. Without that, what's going to happen is you will have tons of housing that is not connected out into the community, that is not part of White Center. And I think, that will only serve to exacerbate the problems and the inequality in our area. Thank you for letting me say that, and I look forward to your response.
I think the lack of sidewalks and connectivity is a huge issue. I actually have an amendment in a potential transportation package at the state that would fund specifically unincorporated areas to be able to connect some multimodal routes, which would include sidewalks and street connectivity. And that's also one of the most efficient ways to utilize our transit system better, as well as to be able to connect the two. There's already a program called Safe Starts for Kids, where you basically map out routes where kids might be going to schools and ensuring that those paths are safe. So this obviously is a draft plan. I'm curious to see kind of what the next iterations look like, but thank you for bringing that up, because I think not only is it a safety issue, it's also an efficiency issue as well in terms of being able to make sure that our current infrastructure is best utilized.
So a lot of the infrastructure needs that you're talking about are in fact the kinds of things that are included in the draft community needs list. And that goes along with the draft sub-area plan. Again, both created in cooperation with the community, and both drafts now ready for a broader segment of the community to reflect on and discuss and debate. It is welcome news that the state legislature might provide some funding for unincorporated sidewalks and roads, because it is a grossly underfunded function of government. Under the Growth Management Act, all of the high value businesses and expensive property got put inside cities, and counties were left with a lot of infrastructure but not much money to pay for it. And this has been one of the most difficult to solve dilemmas all along. And so yes, that state investment would be very much welcome. In addition to that, though, we are focused on some pretty significant road investments, even without the state intervention.
Okay, Emily, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
Come here.
Are we okay? Okay. And I'm pleased to be able to say that the Rapid Ride Line H, which will replace the Route 160, a much more robust, higher quality bus line, will begin service next year. That, in addition to the increased funding for the 128 and 132, both of which operated at full capacity during COVID, unlike our other bus lines, is providing more mobility for White Center. But yeah, I mean, it is critical that the infrastructure keep up with the growth, and the community needs list in conjunction with the sub-area plan is the chance for the community, not just us, the community, to say what it wants and needs.
We have another question. I'm going to ask Carmel to unmute herself.
Great.
Go ahead, Carmel. Go ahead.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate, the two of you, Dow and Joe, taking this time to meet with us and share your opinions and experience so that we can get to know you better. So I'm a local business owner here in White Center. I have a family-run business, and I work in collaboration with many of the other family-run small businesses here in White Center. And we have really been hurting with the fires that have been plaguing our area. And I have certainly heard from both of you tonight a real commitment to want to work with the community to increase opportunity for all of us. I'd like to say that the best way to increase opportunity for those of us small business owners would actually be to join us at our table instead of attempting to invite us to yours, so that you can hear from us directly about what our main issues are and what the services are that we need. Now, I know that both of you have been officially invited to the meeting tomorrow at 1:30, where the businesses that have been most impacted by the recent fires will get a chance to share their personal stories and tell you specifically the impact it's had on them, their families, their communities, and what their specific needs are. So my question for both of you is, will you commit to attending this meeting, joining us at our table, listening to what our needs are, and working with us on that problem?
Yeah, I'll be there. I spoke with some of the representatives the other day about it as well. And look, my family, actually, when we first came to White Center, we had a small business on that strip. It was a billiards hall. Now it's an infamous adult store that's been there for a while. But I understand the impacts that this may have, and I'm sorry that it's happening as well. But I've been speaking with folks behind the scenes over the past few weeks, and I'll be there tomorrow as well.
So it is not the fact that I was invited, but I will try to cancel the conflict that I have and be there. I know that John Taylor, our department director, and other staff are going to be there. And as I've said, John is the lead for us for this challenge. And I think he's doing a really good job of meeting with everyone and pushing forward the resources that folks are asking for. So I will make every effort to be there.
So we're opening it up for questions. If anyone else has any questions for Dow or Joe. Okay, Loretta, who just unmute yourself, Loretta.
These are just not pertaining to what we have been discussing, but just some thoughts that I had or some concerns. And one of them is that our area, North Highline, I really feel a part of Burien opposed to a part of Seattle. Being here for over 55 years, part of the Highline School District and shopping has all been to the south. And I feel that that's part of my home. So that's that. When you guys talk about buying the county park from the city of Seattle, that kind of worries me when we have a lot of parks that we could invest money in, and Seattle should maybe take care of some of their own business. And then I don't know if you have any comments on that, but then I'd like you and the county council to stay as far away as you can from the city council. I don't think they're a good influence. So please stay as far away from them as possible. And then the last thing is that there's so much crime out there. I really think there has to be a consequence for the action. As a parent with your children, there's a consequence for the action. We don't give them a pass and say, well, don't do it again. And they go out and do it again and again and again and again. There's a consequence that stops that action. So I'd like to see something like that be put into place instead of, they can go in and shoplift and not get caught or not pay a price for that. So those are my comments. Just if you have any feedback on any of those.
Well, I will let you know that I tend to try to keep my distance from the Seattle City Council.
Thank you.
There are some fine people there, but I don't think they've set a very good direction. And I think that things will hopefully change a little bit after November 2nd. Crime is obviously tremendous challenge, and violent crime is a big challenge, but also property crime is something that really can't be tolerated. The question is, how do you rein it in? The way in which the criminal legal system has worked over the years, the punitive measures have tended not to have a particular effect on crime, except at the moment the person's in custody. What we're seeking to do is to get people early on before they've sort of descended into a habit or a life of crime and to get them back on the right track. And it applies to adults who maybe are having their first offense. And we have some diversion work that we're putting together with the prosecutor for them, but really with young people, with kids. Over the course of the last 10 years or so, I've been able to reduce the number of youth detained centrally from about 80 to fewer than 15 on average this year. And we've done that by preventing them from getting involved in the criminal legal system, or by providing alternatives to diversion, where we can, rather than having them go into a traumatizing experience that tends then to exacerbate the negative behaviors, getting them into the kind of therapies that will get to their underlying challenge and get them back sort of reunited with their school community. That is the critical thing. We can't allow kids to become alienated from their peers and to drift into other circles where they end up getting in trouble with the police or with the courts. I don't, this is a sprawling subject. We could talk about it forever. It feels like I've been working on it for a long time, but we're making enormous progress. And our goal, of course, is that we will have both safer communities and have more people who have that opportunity to really fulfill their potential.
And I think a lot of the crime prevention is if we were to invest in people up front. There were a lot of programs that when I was a kid aren't available at this point right now. I used to go to the Boys and Girls Club for summer activities and after school activities, and not all of them are still there. I think those are some ways that we can actually try to alleviate these things systemically, but really address kind of the root causes of what causes these things to happen. And right now the county spends about 73% of its general fund on the legal system. Whether it wants to or not, that's what it spends on the legal system. And I believe if we're able to mitigate some of this harm up front, you can actually alleviate some of those issues as well. That's just one of the questions. You had a flurry of them, so I'm not sure there's a particular one that you'd like to address, but that's kind of my thought process associated with it.
Well, could I jump in for a second? Because I know you had this rash of smashed windows up and down 16th and probably in other places in White Center. And that was clearly somebody who had a behavioral health problem. And so here we have the opportunity with the really thousands of units we're buying with the increased behavioral health investment, and hopefully with increased behavioral and health investment from the state, to get a hold of people, to get them off the streets, to start getting them into the treatment they need, and to stop the harm they're causing to the rest of us, including business owners and residents. It is not okay to allow people who are not in control of their faculties to languish on the streets. And it is going to require all of us pulling together to get past this really difficult moment and get people the help they need.
Now, I will point out that the state over the past few years has made significant investments in the behavioral health space. Specifically, Washington State used to be 50 out of 50th in that space. Right now, we're about middle of the pack. And largely thanks to the lead of Senator Dinger and others. And now it has to be implemented at the local level. And that's kind of why it's so important to have this conversation at this point.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so Marissa, I'm going to ask you to unmute so you can ask your question. Can you unmute, Marissa? I guess not. Maybe we'll go back to, oh wait, there you go. She might be having some problems with that. In the meantime, is there anyone else that has any questions? Just raise your hand and I'll ask you to unmute.
Hi, I'm on the phone.
Okay, go ahead.
And I have a question.
And who is this?
Hi, this is Mark Johnston from Skyway, and I also have concerns about the sheriff's office, and in particular, like Seattle, the city of Seattle is experiencing with its police department. I'm really concerned with the level of apparent corruption that has been darkly exhibited only after years of investigation of individuals and a few firings. particularly recently. And other ways, for example, the really boneheaded practice of vaccine hesitation and other ways that police unions are trying to control the jurisdictions that they serve rather than the other way around. And it's a little more complicated in the case of the sheriff's office, because I believe the sheriff not only serves the unincorporated county of 250,000 or so residents, but I believe it serves 500,000 residents of other cities through direct agreements with those cities to be their police force. So the sheriff's office has grown to be this many-headed monster where there is little control over whether officers live in the city or not. Very little control by residents to know whether the officers that serve their community in White Center or in Skyway or other unincorporated areas, whether the officers that patrol those areas live anywhere nearby. And quite frankly, there is a real reluctance of, from what I see from the typical officer on the force, to be concerned about the urban unincorporated areas. So if either of you would be willing to speak on those issues, especially as now whoever becomes county executive after the election will be in charge of the sheriff's department.
Who's first?
Dow, why don't you go ahead?
Okay. To say I was looking forward to taking over responsibility for the sheriff's office might be a bit of an exaggeration. I would say that I embrace the opportunity to fix some of the challenges that have existed, but I know the challenges are significant. It's not just about the King County Sheriff's Office, it's about policing in the 21st century. It is a real challenge. Unlike some city police departments, where there has been a demand, sometimes heated, to defund the police, our sheriff's office has not been heavily funded, and part of that is because of the continued erosion of the county general fund due to the 1% limit on property taxes, not keeping up with inflation and population. We have a lot of vacancies already. It is very difficult, not just for us, but for other departments, to recruit people to become police right now in this environment. I believe that we need to focus on making sure that we have a smooth transition to a new sheriff, that sheriff is able to lead a transformation to meet the expectations of the public in 2021, which are different than what they might have been 50 years ago. And that we really build a department that is able to fulfill a well-defined role well. For instance, we should have excellent response times. It's very difficult when we don't have enough officers to cover the territory. But response times is different than response types. Police should not be called upon to respond to every single problem that occurs. We have to have public health experts. We have to have human services experts involved in the community, preventing problems from happening in the first place, intervening when there's a behavioral health challenge or when there's a kid who's acting out, rather than having an armed officer be the lead in every case. I think we have the wherewithal to do that here in King County, but it is not going to happen overnight. And my goal leading this police agency is to create a highly professional group that meets the expectations of the people of this county, where everyone can feel safe, safe from criminals, safe if they have a family member who's acting out violently, and safe in the sense that they do not fear the state, because some people have a pretty well justified fear of state officers, and that should not be the case either.
And I think we've touched upon policing a little bit earlier as well, and using different types of responses for the occasion as well. I think you may be referring to a Seattle Times article that was pretty recent around some of the things that may have happened as well. And that's why you need to have true accountability measures in place. And I do think, because I have done ride-alongs with sheriff's departments in King County, and there are fine people who are there, but there are going to be folks who need to be held accountable as well. And I think that's one of the most important things that we need to be doing, and looking for the next sheriff is somebody who can hold folks accountable and can transform the way that things are done. But thank you for your comment.
And I'm going to see if Marissa will. Yes. Okay, go ahead, Marissa.
Yes, I'm finally unmuted.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Marissa Howdegi, and today I am going to be speaking from my experience as a coalition coordinator that I've been in my role for about a little over a year now. So we've been kind of talking about behavioral health around youth. And what I want to say is, from what I've heard kind of from school staff and the prevention interventionist that works at Cascade and Evergreen, is really that there still is a big need for behavioral health services for youth that has been increased because of the pandemic, and that there is currently just not enough support. For example, before the pandemic and even last year, there were multiple prevention interventionists in the schools, and now there's only one. And the one person is the person that works with the coalition at the high school. And so really, I know that from this conversation that I'm hearing is that there is money being put into behavioral health services, but how is that really supporting right now the imminent need for behavioral health services in schools, and what needs to be done so that there are more services and more funding for schools and for just community partners to be able to provide services? Because there's a big difference between, saying that there's a community partner or, a person that can provide services, and actually having a youth or a family get into services. And I think what I've kind of just observed is that sometimes students are getting referred, but then we don't hear back if they, were really able to access services. And a lot of the times they were not able to because there was like a long wait list, or the behavioral health provider that they met with wasn't addressing their cultural needs. And so, so I'm going to go back to the questions. The question is like, how can we plan for the short-term imminent need for behavioral health services in schools, and what needs to be done in the long run, so beyond this year? And what are you doing right now?
Yeah, so at least at the state level, what we've done is we've allocated about $300 million specifically towards health providers and counselors in our particular schools. And kind of what you mentioned before is that a lot of these needs were only exacerbated because of the pandemic. There were truly needs that we had before as well. And partially it's because of how we fund our schools is inequitable, because it's largely based off of property taxes. And that's why it's even more important to make sure that these investments are being met. So I completely agree. We fought for funding to make that happen. And then we're actually meeting with some school board members in Seattle and Highline to figure out what that solution could look like going forward. They did have some allocations from the pandemic to go however they saw fit. And I believe that some of them will be using it for that particular space. But that's the short term. Long term is that we have to fix the regressive models in which we fund our education system in Washington State that's been in existence for a long time, to be able to have more investments in our community, so that way your educational outcomes and your healthcare outcomes don't depend on where you live.
Essentially correct. A lot of these issues end up coming back to the really dire lack of behavioral health capacity. When we're talking about criminal legal system involvement, when we're talking about homelessness, when we're talking about youth, the common denominator I'll often find is that there's not enough funding for behavioral health. And we all know that that started with the sort of disinvestment back in the 1980s from the behavioral health system. We're all promised community-based behavioral health. We didn't get it. in the Great Recession of 2008, 9, 10, the state disinvested really dramatically from behavioral health. Senator Nguyen is right. The state has been building back from that, and I want to applaud those legislators who have participated in making that happen. But the county over this time has been scrambling, trying to use the really limited funding sources that we are accorded by the state to kind of prop up this house of cards. Best Starts for Kids was a bid to really start to get ahead of some of this. And the renewal of Best Starts for Kids will provide nearly $1 billion, I believe, for the full range of services we provide to youth. But part of that range is helping to identify behavioral health challenges and get kids into treatment when a small challenge, an emergent challenge, can be most effectively moderated so that it doesn't turn into a life-consuming crisis. That is a foundational notion in Best Starts for Kids. The earlier we start, the better the outcomes we can get. And I'm excited about the renewal. I'm excited about what we're going to be able to do with our schools, including with our school-based health clinics. We're funding up to 4 new school-based health clinics. But really, this is a product, and I think this is inherited by both of the candidates here today. We've inherited a terrible tax system, and we have to band together to figure out how to fix it, because this economy can pay for everything people need to live healthy, successful lives. And the way that we are collecting revenue is so grossly unfair that it makes it impossible to raise the money we need to do these basic things.
So I just want to bring one last thing to your attention, and then I'll be done with my question. Is that also recently Navos disbanded their adolescent mental health program, and so that is no longer a provider for the area, and really that just leaves like CMAR, Consejo, and Sound Mental Health as providers for these schools, and that has definitely put a strain on behavioral health services. So I just wanted to put that out there, just so you're aware. And thank you so much for your commitment to this work, and I look forward to hearing more from you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Marissa.
Liz and Barbara, we're getting a little on in time here, and I have a 7-year-old who hasn't had dinner yet.
Yes, and I promised you only had to stay till 8:30, and you've gone longer than that, so I want to thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. It's been a fascinating conversation.
It's been really good. Please come back.
Well, I'm always right here, but yes, glad to tune in.
I think you have my personal cell phone, so you can reach me whenever you like as well.
Awesome. Thank you both very much.
Thank you, and thank everyone for joining us this evening.
We've got some announcements, please. We're going to give people a chance to make announcements, but we'll let Mr. Constantine and Nguyen go. Have a good night, gentlemen. Bye-bye. I think there's some folks in the room who have announcements. Am I correct? Scott Davis, maybe? I guess not.
Yes, I'm here.
Oh, good.
I can't seem to make my camera stopped working, but I'm here. And my announcement, I just want to let everybody give them a kind of heads up, is that White Center Kiwanis, which like everybody else was in hibernation during the COVID period, we are going to succeed in having a pancake breakfast on October 30th, that's Saturday, morning at the White Center Eagles, 7:30 a.m. to noon. And we promise all our servers will be vaccinated and masked. And if you know the White Center Eagles area, it's pretty big dining area. So there's opportunity to do proper spacing of people. They've been serving people for a while now, and they'll be helping us. So anyway, I invite any and all of you to come on the 30th of October, which is Saturday. to our pancake breakfast. All the money we raise from that goes to helping the kids in the North Highline area. So, and it's our foundation money.
Thank you very much and good luck. Anyone else? Quiet. Well, thank you all for participating and I hope you found it informative. Have a good month.
Wait, Loretta has a question.
Oh,
Go ahead, Loretta, unmute you. Okay, go ahead, Loretta.
My question is, are we going to continue doing the Zooms or will there be a time where we'll be able to go back to the fire department
Well,
to have meetings?
once it's safe, yes, we can go back, but not yet.
Okay,
So I'm
you.
sure that next month will still be on Zoom,
okay,
but please join us.
I will.
Good. Okay. Thank you all. Good night.
Good night.
Bye,
Good night.
Marissa. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Scott.
Okay.
Good to
Go
see
in.
your faces, Liz and Barbara and everybody. This is Diane Vincent.
Thank you so much from Mark Johnston for this great meeting.
Hey, Mark, we're going to get your Zoom thing fixed, okay? I'll give you a call and we'll meet offline and make sure this doesn't happen again.
I sent you a couple texts, just trying to get an idea of what time frame to expect you to be available.
Tomorrow is a pretty horrible day for me. I'm in Vashon. Not why it's horrible. I just have a bad schedule tomorrow. But I won't be back till probably jump into the local lunch if you can. If you work it for local lunch,
Yeah, that's what.
then your problems will be
Okay,
solved.
I'll give it a shot. I'll just text you if for some reason I'll just text you whatever happens, whether it's a good result or same.
Yeah, and I think I know what it is, Mark. But we'll get it fixed, and yeah, just hop into local lunch like usual, and we'll talk about it.
Thank you, Jerry.
Thank you, sir.
It is Jerry, right?
Yes, it is.
All
Thank
right,
you,
bye
sir.
now.
Okay, Jerry, I want to thank you very much for your assistance this evening.
All
I
good,
think it
Barb.
went pretty well.
Yeah.
No Zoom bombing and a good attendance. Hi, John. Hi, John Taylor.
Hey, everybody. I just wanted to say hi,
Yeah, good.
but it went well.
Yeah, I think so. I appreciate all of you joining in, and hopefully we'll see you again soon.
You will. I'm always
Around-
available for you, Barb. You say jump,
Oh,
I'll say how high.
What's that?
You say jump, I'll say how high.
I know, yeah. There's well, I always have issues.
Shut up, really?
Yeah,
You could knock me over with a feather.
I know. Can't believe that, can you?
No, I can't.
Yeah.
No, it's good. I thought it was a good dialogue. And Gary and David and everybody, thanks for helping out.
Yeah. All right. Well, everyone have a great evening and we'll touch base soon.
You will.
And thanks again. Thanks very much, Jerry. I very much appreciate your help tonight.
Of course,
Jerry's
Barbara.
great.
Went well.
Okay. Take care.
All right.
Thank you.
I'm-
Night, everybody.
All right.
Bye.